come COVID-19 and everyone now is suddenly working remotely, and everyone started paying attention to security in a way that they didn't before, because they just took it for granted that if you work from brick and mortar and you have people looking over your shoulders and everything's perfectly secure, that everything is safe.
Lawsome, the podcast for law firms. Powered by ConsultWebs.
Welcome back to Lawsome, the only podcast for law firms that's ready to endure on-hold music at the bank because we kinda dig it. We're here to inform, educate, and entertain the legal community on the latest in legal marketing and law firm development. I am Jake Sanders. He's Paul Julius. Paul, have you ever heard some on-hold music that just hit it?
Man, I have, but the thing is, it's not original. I've never been exposed to new music. I think on hold that really blew me away.
So it was like covers, you're saying?
Well, no, I mean a lot of time, the one time I heard Pink Floyd on a.
What?
It was like a server company that had Dark Side of the Moon was their hold music. I don't know if that's legal or whatever, but I guess they could. But that was kind of nice, kind of relaxing.
Amazing.
Like someone, they get back on the phone, you're like, can you put me back on hold again? Have you ever just been blown away? Like you were on hold and you're like, wow, that was transformative.
I've heard the same on-hold music at 2 or 3 or 4 different companies.
Yes, absolutely.
Welcome to Lawsome. Your listening is very important to us. We appreciate your patience. Please continue to listen, and one of our hosts will be with you shortly.
Well, let's not hold off or hold on any longer and tell people what's on the show today.
Today on the show, we're talking about information security. First, with an article from the Legal Executive Institute. Then we get into it for real with Jordan Ellington of Secure Review. And finally, we test our social engineering skills on our guest with 5 questions we ask everyone.
Pull up a plate. It's the Hot Takes Buffet.
The Hot Take Buffet today is steaming away from the chefs at legalexecutiveinstitute.com. Tasty. The author is Joshua Fireman, which I think he probably is a fireman. The title here is In the Pandemic, Exceptions to Document Management System Work Processes Can No Longer Be the Norm. So he starts out pretty stark and realistic. I'll start here and then we'll go to Paul for a hot take. Josh Fireman says this: law firms have an inglorious history of internal non-compliance with security and information governance policies, such as around their document management systems. Now, however, in a world in which the COVID-19 pandemic has scattered lawyers and staff to remote locations, like Star Wars, the risks to firms and their clients are exponentially greater. So he's basically saying that the track record's bad and there's been exceptions and there can't be any longer. And that's essentially what Jordan Ellington is talking about later in his interview. Paul, document security, we've talked about it before. What's your hot take here? What do you think?
It's so difficult, especially because, lawyers, I mean, in some cases you're working with millions of pages of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so I can't, I don't want to take a flamethrower to law firms or anything here. This is a lot to manage. And I think we talked to Jordan a little bit more in depth about it later. But the one thing that really leapt out at me from this article was this line. It said, again, to be blunt, I doubt there is a law firm in the AM Law 200 that does not have lawyers and staff storing confidential information in personal email accounts, personally owned computers, or other high-risk locations such as their work hard drives. I on the one hand, I'm not surprised, but at the same time, I have to say, like, how is this still happening? I mean, can't we? That's just not cool.
Well,
there's no other way to say it.
But everybody knows it's not cool. And it's sort of like health. Everybody knows you're not supposed to eat cheese and chocolate, and everybody knows you're not supposed to have wine spritzers, on the roof, lighting fireworks again. Get down from there, Paul.
Yep.
Everyone knows what's bad for them. And yet we still sort of skirt this issue where we say, not me. It couldn't happen here. Or maybe I'm just not important to get stolen from. I mean, like, it's a weird sort of exception that we make in our heads, and it seems like a personal choice. In the article, Josh Fireman says 95% of this stuff is human error for the most part. People kind of clicking around. Where does that come from? And now that you're remote, what does this entail? Am I going to have to be monitoring keystrokes and surveilling people? And
what's the boundary?
Well, if you're a lawyer, you're down to go through those boundaries to ensure that wire transfer for millions of dollars or this document with sensitive discovery information is not going to someone who it's not supposed to. But the leaky bucket isn't in control. Like you can't control it. You would have to only adopt a mindset that was aware of all of the potential threats to your document stream, your information stream. And I think, if you're saying that at these AM 200 firms, people are using personal accounts, smalls are doing the same just because they have to be scrappy. What's the answer here? Thankfully, the answer is secure review, which is our Jordan Ellington, our next guest. This is this idea of a third-party place where a sort of safe deposit box, a sort of, guaranteed, vetted place where you can make sure your documents are going to the contractors that are working on your stuff securely. And that you sort of take a little bit of that error out of it because you just use this. You just go through secure review. I think that would be the only way to do it. You can only access it through here. Then that's. But what, Paul? Is that?
People have tried it. I think the problem is that you try and set up these processes, but how do you enforce it? And there's this issue of liability as well. And I like that's kind of what we're talking about here is it's having an additional layer. There's been a lot of stuff in even the news, a lot of stories in the news about even government officials having things using a personal email, unsecured servers. This is kind of what we're talking about here. And while those lead us down a different path, which we're not going to take here.
No.
It's the same point that, if you've got a bunch of people coming in and out of a house, you need someone there or something there to make sure that the last person locked the door.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're looking at.
And it's so interesting you use that door metaphor because that's exactly what Jordan talks about later is the door. Who leaving doors open. But I think my hot take is knowing what the house looks like and all of the potential portals. And then understanding what a hot doorknob feels like. I guess there's just situational awareness and some sort of practical nature, but having a third party vetted place where you can interact with your documents in a safe manner and secure, I think that's really the best way to get the peace of mind. Jordan has that. He's coming up, and you should just stick around because it's important, it's wholesome, It's beneficial. It's nutritious. It's lawsome.
Yeah. Like oatmeal.
Ooh.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Tired of being dragged around by Google AdWords or lackluster website designs? Yeah! Are you a lawyer looking for a digital marketing company that you can trust? Yeah! Well, you need ConsultWebs. Yeah! Since 1999, we've driven 1 million leads to our law firm clients. We only work with lawyers, so our designs and marketing campaigns are battle tested. And since we've started, we've generated hundreds of millions of dollars for our clients, and we haven't even broken a sweat. Go to consultwebs.com to learn more.
And now for a lawsome interview.
Jordan Ellington is the founder of Secure Review, a simple, safe solution for remote work. Jordan has over 25 years of application development focusing on document collaboration systems for major corporate, financial services, and law firms, as well as developing the first extranet presence of 3 of the top 20 U.S. law firms. He's been a digital architect, a president, a CEO, an entrepreneur, and a pilot, and now hanging in our hangar, making his debut in the Lawsome Studios today. Please welcome Jordan Ellington.
Nice to meet you both. Yay.
Welcome to the show. Talk to us about Secure Review. What is it, and how is it specifically helping law firms be secure?
Absolutely. So we started Secure Review in 2017, working with an AmLaw 50 firm, and their challenge was working with a variety of contract staffing companies, both large and small, who had different security postures, different standards for information technology, and wanting to basically keep the information of their clients safe in a consistent way, regardless of the outside vendor that they worked with. So the design purpose of Secure Review is to essentially reduce the risk of information loss or leaking due to maybe some door that was left open by accident or human error. Just make it difficult for accidents to happen and client confidential information to be lost, which of course would be a huge reputational risk to the law firm as well as to their clients.
So, and you're talking about security postures. I love the really delicate way you phrase that, because there's people just walking around with no raincoat, just in the buck, in the rain, unprotected, no umbrella, no shelter. And that's a security posture. I mean, how do you not knock the hustle here? I mean, how do you not shame people? Is it like how widespread is this problem, do you think? Maybe just talk to the widespread nature of it. How are people's security postures, do you find, Jordan?
That's a loaded question.
The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
The vendors that we are working with, between the law firms and of course the vendors range from public companies with a big IT budget so that they can do everything just right, to smaller providers that essentially are really good at recruiting staff, but don't necessarily have a big IT budget. And yet they have good attorneys for reviews.
Right.
So there's a wide range of expertise and budget available to protect this process. We have some firms that have, and this is pre-COVID-19, right? So we're going to get to the COVID-19 situation. But pre-COVID-19, we have large companies that have big conferences or real estate for reviews. And then we have other firms that perhaps would just rent space in a Regis, some other pop-up location, and rent computers. So again, a really wide array of, again, security posture as to who's responsible for making sure that this information doesn't leak.
I want to talk a little bit more specifically about some of the problems, the document security problems that law firms face, and maybe you could tell us some horror stories. But I have kind of a use case question, maybe, or maybe this sort of leads into it. But we've had several guests on the show who basically are kind of doing legal outsourcing, like gig work and project-based work for lawyers. And you can either, offer your services or, pick up projects and put stuff out there to get people to do it. And it's funny that we're talking to you now, because one thing that popped in my head when we're talking about it, they said, a common tactic that lawyers do, opposing counsel will do, is a document dump. They'll enter in whatever, a million pages of stuff. And so now someone's got to go through all this. And a lot of times it's subcontracted out. And I was thinking, like, well, so what do they do? Just put that like in a Dropbox or something? Or do you like share it? Like how, right. Those are like, that's what I think. So, is that some of the security we're talking about? Like, can you tell us a little bit more like about some situational stuff and maybe some of the nastiest ones you've ever had to deal with?
Right. So for example, it's not put in a Dropbox. It will be inside a typically a relativity platform for document review. Okay. So there will be a hosting provider, which may not be the same organization that provides the contract attorney. So they're charged with taking all these documents and parsing them and searching them and putting them into a relativity database or a similar review database, so that then the gig workers, the contract attorneys, if you want to call them that, get called in to, just go through all this information and classify it and find the smoking gun. So, and so now you're starting to get a picture of, we have the law firm representing a client. They've provided information to a hosting provider to get the information ready for review. And then they've called yet another provider to hire the contract attorneys. I think they would like to be called contract attorneys rather than gig workers, but contract attorneys, so that they can start this review process. And we want to make sure that it's safe, that the reviewer is not, working on a PC that's compromised. So that they're working from a specific location, that perhaps they're not working from Starbucks, although right now no one's working from Starbucks. So that's the general gist of the review process. And it could be, 3 contract attorneys or 50 or 100 for a period of a few days or a few weeks or a few months. That really depends on how big the dump is.
Paul asked him this question that you're.
Oh, yeah, I do. So I guess as far as the horror story goes, have you ever been in a situation where you're called in and there's actually someone at the firm who's on top of this? Like, is there ever like a chief security officer at the firm, or do they always get has anyone ever called you before something bad happened, or is it always like, oh man?
Well, we hopefully are engaged before something bad happens. So there's various levels of vetting. So on the law firm side, they probably have a vendor onboarding system. So they'll take their vendors, whether they are the hosting providers or the staffing companies, and put them through a security audit. Our position is that a security audit is just a snapshot. It's a point in time where everyone is checking the boxes. And obviously a security audit is better than not having a security audit.
Sure.
The horror stories are really things that unfortunately we can't get into in detail because they're highly confidential, and it's not something that we would be referencing directly.
Sure. Is there like a common? I don't know. I guess I don't want you to. I guess if we ask, we're going to tell someone who has nefarious intentions where to go look.
But it would be a common theme that sort of underlies a lot of the problems. I think that's maybe what we're looking for, is just like, maybe is there some sort of like don't cross the streams or don't feed the gremlin past midnight. Is there? It's usually human error, maybe, or is there something there we can pick apart?
It's typically human error, like someone leaving a door open. Even if you look at the largest data breaches with credit bureaus recently, et cetera, where we have millions of user records that are exposed, it's often because someone just forgot to close the door. There was a procedure, it wasn't followed, and so one of the themes that we have from a secure review perspective is that we're not replacing security, we're just adding one more layer so that if someone forgets to lock the door, there's just another layer that's independent from the processes of the law firm. It's independent from the processes of the vendors, and we provide like just one more barrier before information is accidentally disclosed. And it can be extraordinarily expensive. I mean, just one hot document that gets out could cost tens of millions of dollars, even hundreds of millions of dollars, and incalculable reputational risks. So this is really what we're dealing with.
Ooh. So, and thinking that I saw a graph the other day on LinkedIn, and it was what has kind of inspired your adoption of tech recently? Was it your CEO? Was it your CTO? And they asked a bunch of people who own businesses. Or was it COVID-19? And everyone mentioned COVID-19 being this thing that has jettisoned them towards adopting legal tech and making sure things are secure, or that when they're working remote, they need to be more aware of these, security risks that you're speaking of. Have you seen an increase in inquiries, and do you feel like lawyers are taking, data security, document security more seriously, during this time of COVID? Just kind of wrap on the COVID.
Oh, absolutely. So, pre-COVID, we were promoting secure review also to promote remote review. So we were saying, okay, you can save on real estate space. You can find people in, locations that perhaps are more favorable from a rate perspective. You can find people that are available because everyone in town is booked up because there's a bunch of big cases in DC and we can't find anyone. So let's go find them somewhere else. Come COVID-19, and everyone now is suddenly working remotely. And everyone started paying attention to security in a way that they didn't before, because they just took it for granted that if you work from brick and mortar and you have people looking over your shoulders and everything's perfectly secure, that everything is safe. And now everyone's working at home. You don't even know who's looking at your documents on a computer. It could be the right person, and it could be the person's spouse or partner or someone else. There's very, very little control. And so I think COVID-19 is really, I think that's been positive, and from a security perspective has caused people to really think about, who's looking at their documents and when. In terms of interest, at the first couple of weeks after work from home orders went out, our phones were essentially ringing off the hook, trying to get people, more secure working from home.
Man, I mean, when you're talking about the stakes and the fraud and the criminal aspect of it, I mean, we didn't quite hit on it because COVID-19 is also creating a lot of fraud. Is there some like specific fraud stuff that you've been seeing with COVID, that like email phishing schemes or something that's COVID related?
Oh, without a doubt. In terms of just general email traffic, not specific to my customers, but with regards to the opportunities presented by COVID, I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, we're looking at a reassessment of the whole work from home scenario, whereas before it was frowned on. I don't think we're ever going to go back, even when the COVID issue is resolved. We will have found better and safer ways to work together remotely. It's just quite fortunate, at least for finding some fortune, some silver linings in the misfortunes, that Secure Review was able to be in this position where we'd been working for years to figure out how to make remote work secure. And we just happened to be at the right place at the right time.
Nice. So yeah,
So I do have one question about that, if you don't mind. I'm curious. So Secure Review are you more focused on the like, would you say your customers or clients are more the law firms or these service providers? Because like we're pretty familiar with like Law Clerk and stuff like that, who are kind of these, contract project based platforms. Do you ever work with them so that they can, ensure some type of security from that aspect, I guess? Just making sure, giving people who use that platform kind of an added layer of protection with that, or is that just like not even possible?
That's interesting. So pre-COVID-19, the driving force behind Secure Review was either the law firm or the client that wanted to impose a certain level of security, a security posture, working with their providers. Post-COVID-19, in a situation where suddenly everyone's working at home, we've been partnering with the providers to, help them continue providing services in a secure context. So it just kind of went upside down. And of course, they're working with law firms, and we get introduced to the law firms and are vetted by their clients. But it's actually the providers that are, pushing our services to use, to promote their own review services securely.
Nice. Cool.
Man, love it. Oh, sorry, I'm muted.
If I could just touch, because we were talking about like the information security aspect. There was one part it's a new concept, I think, that we haven't really talked about, is really the human aspect, or we're calling it human endpoint security. Who's actually working at your, on your information somewhere at home.
So, I mean, tell it, like, give us the ins and outs. I mean, what's the issue? What are you doing with that? I mean, it's a weird thing thinking that some guys, like Jake said, sitting in the closet or in their home office, going through these highly sensitive documents, and boom, they're just off in the, there's an air quote cloud, or wherever that is.
Or to an AOL account or something like.
Yeah. Yes. So we've been talking about a concept which we affectionately call protecting the last 18 inches of the internet. It's a made up number, but it's approximately the space between someone sitting in front of the computer and the computer. So it's not under the control of the information system, or at least not directly.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what we've done is within Secure Review, we've interfaced in a way that respects privacy. We've interfaced with the webcam so that the user can self-register their profile picture, and then when they get online, the system knows when the person is sitting in front of the PC. If they get up, the screen gets blanked, or if someone that's not authorized sits next to them, the screen gets blanked, and so forth. So we've found that clients that really care about the confidentiality, who's looking at the information, have been really interested in knowing that, it's not only someone knowing a username and password and having multi-factor authentication, they actually know that the right person is looking at the information on the other side of the internet, that last 18 inches.
Oh, man.
That
is
cool.
The bane of IT guys everywhere is walking away from your desk without logging off. It's
exactly.
Oh,
exactly. So it's quite convenient in some ways, because you can just get up and, a few seconds later, the screen blanks, and, people ask you, well, isn't it just like, your Face ID on your phone? And it's not quite, because, I can unlock my phone and then just pass it to you, and you can carry on and be me looking at my information or someone else's.
let's get this down to the person listening right now. What's one thing one piece of advice you could give our audience that they could do to improve their document security, and in particular improve or at least raise their awareness and help lock down maybe some of those doors that are getting left open, considering working with contract lawyers or outsourcing some of their work.
Yeah, absolutely. Setting aside secure review as the technology, making sure that the PC that you're working on is as safe as possible. So, patched, it has an antivirus, that you follow best practices in terms of when you're using the computer and you see an email and you're trained to understand that this might be a phishing email and you don't start clicking on links that you shouldn't click on. So there's a series of steps that, some of them are common sense and some of them are just making sure that your computer is safe. And, we've noticed with the deployment of secure review in the wild, as I like to call it, that there are many types of computers, even running obsolete operating systems that are not patched and so forth. So secure review becomes kind of that last bastion between that separation between the computer and the confidential data. But it really starts with your personal computer. And secondly, if you can isolate the information that you're looking at with some sort of a virtual machine, whether it's your firm's provided Citrix or some other third party, so that you don't actually have the information on your computer, that also provides good isolation between confidential data and information on your computer.
So it's like a safe deposit box or some place where you can keep things. I can see why Paul was confused with Dropbox. How do you see like a smaller law firm using Dropbox still and saying, "What's the problem, Jordan? Get out of here"? Do you see that?
Yeah, so Dropbox as a technology is fine, but it's needs to be locked down. It's very easy for people to get into information, forget that it had links that were opened and shared. Right. I think it would be hard to implement a good security policy exclusively around Dropbox for important information.
Oh man, yeah, and I kind of threw that out on purpose because I've actually had that exact scenario where it's a long email thread and you don't even know, like 20 emails down, that somebody put a link into something that maybe not everybody was supposed to see. Yeah, it happens. But Jake, I remember when you were the director at your law firm, the marketing director, you used to tell me about the IT guy pulling his hair out because lawyers were constantly clicking on stuff.
Yeah,
in their email.
Yeah, it was a personal thing, but the doors being left open. I mean, what you outlined, I think, is more akin to what it is. I don't think there is this malign sense or this sort of airheadedness. These are really smart, competent people that maybe had an email that was just threaded and they couldn't see it. I mean, it is a lot of in the land of data, as things are going past, it's really more important to have someone in between that can catch things. And I think that's like secure review sort of stands out as this idea where it's like, make sure you have a place where you can trust where it is and where it's going and who's accessing it. It's more important than maybe ever. And but you can't fix stupid.
I mean, it's more like a home security system. I mean, you should lock your doors, but if you don't and someone opens it up, an alarm's going to go off anyway. So you got it covered. Cool.
So how can people learn more about you, Jordan, and secure review on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a fairly comprehensive website at securereview.com. I think you'll find there's a blog area where there's some thought leadership going on there. It talks about a lot of the scenarios that we're actually speaking about right now. And we take a lot of input, from people who are practicing either at the law firm side or the service provider perspective. and then I have a lot of my information out on LinkedIn at Jordan Ellington is my LinkedIn information.
5 questions we ask everyone.
What was the last book you read?
What was the last book I read?
There's no wrong answers here.
It was just an old book that I had lying around. It was just The Last Samurai. It was just a big old fat book that I was reading many years ago. I can't tell you why I picked it up again.
It's what? Everybody's it's like you can't go to the library. My kids are destroyed. All right, number 2. What is your favorite place?
My favorite place that I like to disappear in is some small island in the Bahamas. As you mentioned, I'm a pilot, and when I can, I try to disappear for a couple of days or a week or so in some small island and emerald waters.
That sounds so cool.
That sounds
like just being able to be like, yep, I'm just gonna hop in a plane and
Hey. Oh wow.
All right.
Yeah, but if I could just clarify that, it's a little bit, it's not a very fast plane. It's a bit of a trip, you go to Florida, stay overnight and fly. So there's an adventure component to this. It's not, a big jet flying over. So
I think we all envision. Yeah, we all envision the Indiana Jones red dot line.
That's exactly what I
and
thought.
it's like a 2-second flight. That's not so bad.
Landing on the water. Yeah, that'd be cool as hell. All right, number 3. What sites, blogs, newsletters, or podcasts do you regularly check in with?
Probably the law, a lot of the law journals and related, above the law, a lot of the current type blogs that have to do with the customers that I'm dealing with.
Nice. Number 4. If you were stranded on a desert island, well, I guess you wouldn't be because you have that water plane, but let's throw that out. If you were stranded on a desert island and could only pick one condiment to take with you, what would it be?
Let's see. A condiment. I think I would take pepper.
Nice.
Oh.
It's an excellent answer. And we're grateful it's not mustard.
Everybody says mustard. I think Jordan's on to something.
You have salt in the water.
Yeah.
Yep.
So some pepper.
Okay, last one. After a long day or a long week at work, how do you relax and unwind?
I'll either take a swim or I'll take a motorcycle ride. That's my other passion. So I'm a motorcycle rider. And if I'm lucky, maybe I'll just take a few takeoffs and landings at the airport.
For show notes, links, and info, go to thelawsonpodcast.com or follow us on Twitter or Facebook. Be sure to leave us a review and rating in iTunes or wherever you find the you listen to. Until next week, stay lawson.